Okay, so the presentation, as I mentioned, it will be about challenges facing geotechnical engineers in different stages of engineering projects. So what are we going to cover here? First, we are going to talk about why challenges do exist, like why we face technical and non-technical challenges in our day-to-day work. Secondly, we will touch base on non-technical challenges that span over the entire project life, not just design or construction, or actually it could span over our entire career life. Then we will be more focused about the challenges that are related to the design stage. Then those are related to tendering or pre-construction. Then those related to challenges, and we will end up with conclusions. So first of all, why do challenges exist? First of all, challenges do exist because we are civil engineers dealing with large projects that involve multi-million dollars investment. So with that amount of money, you expect to see challenges. Another reason is different interests. You have different stakeholders with competing interests. You have the owner, you have the consultant, you have the contractor. Each of these parties has their own interest and their own priorities. And sometimes the priorities of different parties are not aligned together. So this is one of the biggest challenges we are going to talk about, how to align these interests together one way or another. A third reason is a diversity of stakeholders. So even not all owners or not all contractors or not all consultants are the same. They're, they are diverse, whether diverse in the background, whether they are technical people, whether they are executive, where they are project managers or construction leads. Each background comes with a whole package, a whole different package. Comes with challenges, comes with priorities, comes with perception. So it is very natural to see different interests and different priorities in project because people have different roles, and those roles impose some kind of commitment and priorities. The second reason associated with diversity is related to the multicultural nature of Canada, which is a good thing. Even for contractors or owners or consultants in Canada are coming from different backgrounds. As you all know, there are like in Greater Toronto area, for example, there are more than 130 spoken language. So people coming from different cultural backgrounds, they come with different perception, different ways of doing things. So all these result in different background, and sometimes if not managed the right way could result in challenges and, like in the worst case scenario, some conflicts. Another reason is leadership and management skills. There are two very common scenarios in engineering project. When the first scenario, which is the good one, is you have people managing the project or leading the project, whether on the owner or the contractor or the consultant side, who are experienced in the specific nature of the project. So with their relevant experience, that facilitates so many things. They understand the pros and cons of different scenarios. They understand the specific needs of the project, etc., etc. Versus there is another scenario which is less favorable when you have people leading the project with broader exposure rather than relevant experience. Those guys could be excellent project manager or excellent leads, but they may be missing some of the aspects of the project that can steer the project the right direction in a cost-effective and time-effective manner. So when you have a situation like this, you probably you will probably face lots of challenges in engineering projects. And the last reason, we are engineers. So we are problem solvers. We are there to solve problems. So people tend to rely on us to find a way to reach the finish line in an efficient and successful way. So what are the general non-technical challenges? These are, as I mentioned, challenges that could even span over the entire career life. And we don't want to end like the person in the picture because of these challenges. So we need to understand these challenges and how to deal with them in a positive way. The first challenge is related to professional development. It's one of the biggest challenge we all face. Why? Because we need continuous education. We need to upgrade ourselves on continuous basis, because literally, if we are not upgrading, we will be actually downgrading, because everyone around us will be upgrading. So this is not an option, not a luxury. So continuous education is a must for geotechnical engineers and civil engineers in general. So how can we achieve continuous education? This could be happening through self-learning, reading books, reading technical papers, design manuals, codes, also through online resources, through online courses, webinars, webinars, workshops, anything that we can find online. And finally, if we want to shape that in a more formal way, we can go to graduate studies, especially for geotechnical engineering. Geotechnical engineering is usually not very well covered in the undergraduate studies, so especially in Canada. So in some cases, Canada and the US. So in many cases, it becomes a very good idea to go to graduate school and refine and polish our knowledge and make ourselves up to date with the recent development and the techniques used in the industry and the emerging research and future trends and stuff like that. The second thing we can do to have continuous education and to upgrade ourselves is to diversify our exposure. We need to have various exposure. This can be done through different working on different project types. So if we work on a bridge this year, try to work on a building next year, a pipeline the following year. So the bottom line here is try to avoid repeating yourselves. Try to avoid doing the exact same thing over and over. The other thing that can help with exposure is working with different seniors. Don't keep working with the same person forever. If you have the luxury of having multiple senior people in your company, try to diversify the senior person you are working with, because like everyone can offer you a different experience and a different mentorship. So always try to make use of that. The second aspect of the non-technical general challenges is career development, which is different from professional development. Career development means that there is a clear path where you are. So if you are in a company and you see that there is a clear career path for you, and that uh, you can see where you will be in 2 years, in 5 years, maybe in 10 years, that's very good. But if you don't see a clear career path, then you need to think, is this the right place for me? This is a quite challenging question. And I find that so many people these days are driven by money, which I cannot blame them for sure. But always put in mind there are other aspects than money. There is like company culture, working environment, mentorship, uh, kinds of projects. All these factors play an important role in the way they shape your career. The second is stagnant versus continuous development. Even with companies with clear career path, you may find yourself not improving, not moving forward. You cannot climb the ladder. So if this is the case, you need to start asking yourself whether it's my problem, am I doing something wrong? Or maybe the same question in the previous bullet point. Maybe this is not the right place for you. Maybe the chemistry is not there. It is not about it's a bad company or a good company. Maybe it's just the chemistry. This is not the right place for you. The third uh, challenge is quite tricky, which is loyalty versus public commitment. As we all know, we should always be loyal to our company or our employer, and we should do our best to make our company better and more successful. However, our ultimate responsibility as geotechnical engineer and professional engineers in general is the public. So according to professional engineering organization like Professional Engineer Ontario and the same equivalent in Alberta and BC, we should always put the best interest of the public uh, at the first as our first priority in terms of public safety, in terms of public money and stuff like that. So how to deal with that? It's a quite challenge. So the best way to deal with that is to speak up with your superiors or your supervisors. If you see something that you feel that can compromise on your professional ethics or the public interest, you should talk to someone. I cannot imagine that nobody cares. If someone doesn't care, I am sure that you will find someone else who cares about public interest. So this is like something very important to consider, that if you speak up, you may be like dragging someone attention to a problem that was overlooked. On the, on the opposite side, you might be assessing the situation the wrong way. Maybe if you speak up and you talk to someone senior who understand what is happening behind the scene, he can prove you wrong. And there is no conflict between the company interest and the public interest. So in all cases, keeping this to yourself is the worst thing you can do. But of course, you have to approach the right people with the right attitude. And in the worst case scenario, if you find yourself in a deadlock, also you may consider a career change, not career change, an employer change. If you see that you are not going anywhere and you are compromising on the public interest and you cannot find a solution in your company, maybe it's time to change your employer. But once again, this should be the very last resort. I really encourage everyone to try to stick to his company unless there is some like real problems, because like loyalty is good and changing your employer is a lose-lose situation. The company will lose you, and if it's a good company, you will lose the company and the connection you developed and all sorts of things. So always treat this as the very last resort. Let's now talk about challenges related to different stages of the project. Design. One of the most important challenges in design is to understand the delivery model. As you know, like there are several delivery models in the market right now. There is a traditional design bid build, there is like design build, progressive design build, alliance. So it is important to understand the delivery model, and because every delivery model comes with its own expectation and design philosophy. And you need to be familiar with the details relevant to that delivery model. The second challenge, which I'm sure most of us go through like on daily basis or like in the best case scenario weekly basis, is the schedule and budget limitation. In so many cases, you are squeezed in the budget and squeezed in the schedule. So in that case, you need to take some action. First of all, you need to speak about workload. If you are overloaded, don't take more work. Otherwise, you may not be able to deliver, or you may not be able to deliver the right quality. And by that time, nobody would remember you were overloaded. They will just remember that your deliverables were not that good. Seek help on time management. There is no problem in seeking help. If you are stuck and don't know what to do, seek help. Talk to your peers, talk to your supervisor, and make sure that you try to collect information on the best way to deal with the situation. Finally, if you find that you cannot take the workload and you cannot deliver within the budget and the schedule, push back, or at least pushback doesn't mean that you will not do the work, but you make whoever giving you the work aware that you may not be able to deliver on time or within the budget they have in mind. A third challenge which has become quite alarming in the past few years is ownership of deliverables. In so many cases, I have seen junior and intermediate engineers losing the passion for what they are doing. So if they are going to submit a report, they submit the report at like the minimum quality they can provide, relying that the report will be reviewed by uh, a senior and all gaps will be filled. I don't think this is the right attitude. I think the right attitude is to treat the deliverable as if it is your own company and that you are submitting this deliverable to the client directly, as if nobody is going to review it. And talk to talk to yourself and ask yourself whether this is the quality you want to deliver to your client or not. So this would require you understand the various aspects of the deliverables. It would require teamwork with your supervisor and with your peers, and it would also require coordination with other disciplines if you are working in a multidisciplinary company. Other challenges related to design stage practical aspects of the deliverables. You need, like one of the biggest problem is that some consultant specifically would provide deliverables that are quite theoretical, that do not take into consideration the practical aspect of the engineering work, which is a big thing. Because in the end, we don't want to hear from the contractor or from whoever that our design is not buildable. So we need to understand the practical aspect. And this can be done through different ways. Proactive research of subject matters. If you are working on a subject, you try to research this subject and try to understand the practical implication. Don't just rely, like, which is a common mistake, that people copy and paste all the reports. It's good that you don't start from scratch, but also try to understand what you are doing. Try to find a way to improve the quality of your deliverables. So you can research your subject matter either online or by reading books or manuals or design guidelines or construction guidelines. You can also consult with your peers and seniors and try to understand the practical aspect related to what you are working on. And if you are in alternative delivery model where you are teaming up with a contractor in a design build or an alliance setup, talk to your contractor. It's a fantastic opportunity to be working like on day-to-day basis with the builder. Talk to contractor, understand the practical aspect, try to get uh, uh, ideas from them about constructability and stuff like that, and implement that in your design. The last challenge associated with the design, which can span over the entire project as well, is client education and management. This is one of the most challenging things we face in engineering project. Sometimes this can be manifested in unrealistic requirement, whether technical requirement or schedule requirement. And in that case, you need to push back a little bit. Like I remember in one project, the client wanted zero settlement for their development, which seriously, there is nothing like zero settlement. So it is our duty as engineers to explain where we are coming from in plain English to our clients and to educate our clients. But it is our responsibility, not the client responsibility. Another aspect or another challenge is insufficient information. We are often faced with insufficient geotechnical information. And in that case, we should put a proposal for a complementary investigation or put a disclaimer in our reports or ask for instrumentation and monitoring. So it is also about communication. It's also about how to deliver the message to the client. And the third thing is risk and opportunity identification, which is related to the previous 2 points, because based on the technical and schedule challenges and the adequacy of the available information, there are risks and opportunities, and these should be communicated with the client. And that's why in so many projects right now, especially large one, a key deliverable is risk register, where people highlight the potential risk and opportunities in the project. Finally, introduction of innovative solution. As I mentioned, you always need to educate your client. If you do your homework and you find a new technique or a new design methodology or a new solution to the problem, don't hesitate to share that with the client. Of course, through the proper channels. You are not going to talk to the client right away, but through the proper channels. Don't stick to the same old, same old. And to present a new idea, you need to have solid background about this new idea. So you need to research the idea, and then you need to support your research by successful case history where this new technique or new methodology was used. The second stage is is the tendering and pre-construction stage, and this comes with different challenges. Contractor qualification, you need to make sure that there is an objective evaluation of the contractor specification. This can be done through technical and financial metrics for evaluation by asking the contractor to provide method statements or work plans, and by asking the contractor to provide construction list of construction deliverables. So you make sure that the contractor qualifications are properly assessed and that all parties are all on the same page. Another challenge is bidding pressure. Sometimes you see aggressive bidding, hoping for change order during the construction stage. So when you pick that up and you see that there is like a very low price in the bidding, you need it's part also of the risk and opportunities. You need to raise a flag to make sure that everyone is aware of that. You can also see requests for information with the implicit intention to change a specification. And you should do all your best to avoid changing the specification if you believe the specification is done the right way, except that you have to be open-minded. If you see something that is not really, that is, sorry, going to improve the specification, don't hesitate in that case to change the specification through an addendum or something. This is the last uh, chance to change the specification, because as we are going to touch on the about the construction phase, it is not advisable or it is not recommended to change the specification during construction. Second, the second point or the following point is related to schedule and cost-driven project. Make sure that the projects are not solely driven by schedule and cost. Schedule and cost are very important, provided you don't compromise on the quality. And this will come to the practical aspect we are going to talk about. So it's a very good compromise is to make sure that the schedule and cost are respected, but at the same time, we are delivering high quality project. The last thing is alternative solutions. Sometimes the contractor will push back against the design or parts of the design. You shouldn't be defensive about that. Be receptive of new ideas, and you can ask the contractor for that case to provide two kinds of bids. They can provide conforming bid that respect the original design, and they can provide alternative bid with a new alternative or a new design ideas. Another very important thing in the pre-construction phase is to establish QA, to make sure that a QA QC procedure are established. So sometimes this is referred to as quality verification engineer or quality assurance consultant. Make sure that a company with adequate qualification is handling this assignment. And you also need to take care of the contract, to be aware of the contractual relationship. You don't want the quality verification engineer to be retained by the contractor. It should be an independent entity retained by the owner. Otherwise, there is a good chance of conflict of interest. Permitting and approval. Permitting and approval can result in significant delay and increased cost if they are associated with if the project is associated with significant impact on the environment. So before reaching this stage, you need to be aware of the permitting and approval requirement for your project and take a proactive approach to minimize the schedule and cost impact. Stakeholder management, this is in a sense similar to client education that we discussed for the design stage. But here you are not dealing with contract owners only. You are dealing with owners, you are dealing with construction leads, you are dealing with QA, QC teams, designer, regulator, so many people with competing interests. So you have a bigger role in educating all these parties and making sure that you have open channels with the ultimate goal in the second bullet point of having cost-effective, schedule-effective solution with minimum impact on the environment. Challenges during the construction stage. The main challenge for us during the construction stage is that we need to be very responsive. Any technical support during construction stage should be very responsive and provided in a timely manner, especially that the problem is that sometimes we get overloaded by submittals. In construction, you can see memos, requests for information, inspection reports, change notice, all sorts of documents coming your way. So it it it's a challenge, and we should do our best to be responsive. And this would only come with allowance for the right number and the right levels of people involved in that stage. So you need people of different levels with different capacity involved to make sure you will be on top of the construction process. The second point is related to flexibility with QA QC result. As I mentioned, it is common, especially in larger project, to have quality verification engineer. And the challenge here is to make sure that the results are treated in a practical way. Like, for example, if the target dry field density from compaction work is like 98%, if you end up with 97.8, you don't say like, okay, this is not acceptable. So there is some kind of judgment here about how to interpret deviations and to evaluate the effect of these deviation on the project as a whole. And sometimes if something proves wrong in the specification during construction, you may need to make some changes. But as I mentioned, you can change the specification usually during the pre-construction or the tendering stage. But during construction, it is almost difficult to do that. It's better to make changes through site instruction or FCR field change requests and stuff like that. Potential for claims. This is a very critical subject. You need to be very mindful about what could trigger claims on the contractor side. So you need to understand what is related to design and what is related to construction means and method. It is not up to engineers to intervene with construction means and method. This is a contractor's baby. So always be mindful of what is related to design that you should be mindful of and careful about versus what is related to contractors means and method. And this would require open communication because most of these claims come from miscommunication between different stakeholders. So open channels of communication and proper documentation is the key to deal with these challenges. Site access and approval of QA works. Like in many cases, like engineers are required to approve construction quality assurance and quality control works. And that would require site access. So you need to make sure that the deliverables you are getting from the quality verification engineer are in line with what is actually recorded on site. And I have seen cases where engineers are denied access to the field records, and in that case, from my point of view, engineers shouldn't sign off on construction records that they cannot verify. And unfortunately, this comes sometimes with aggressive behavior on site. And in such a case, it is very important to document this right away and escalate it because in all cases, aggressive behavior shouldn't be tolerated on construction site or anywhere in the engineering project in general. Political pressure, this is another challenge. You will see push for premature approval. This is always driven by claims related to cost and schedule implication. So it is it is strongly recommended to not provide uh, premature approval. And if you have to provide something, you can provide conditional approval, providing the complete records will come to you at a later stage. So this is something you need to be aware of because this can put you in real trouble. So don't yield in front of pressure or from the contractor or whoever or construction manager to approve things while you don't have the full picture. And if things escalate, don't hesitate to get the owner involved because it is their product and it is their project in the end. So if the pressure goes beyond reasonable limit, there is no harm in involving the owner. Remedial work. If in the worst case scenario where remedial works are needed, you need to have clear justification why these remedial works are needed. And this should be in plain English because this will involve a lot of money. So you need to make sure that all stakeholders understand why remedial works are needed. And this would involve, once again, communication and documentation. So as I mentioned several times, I cannot emphasize more on the importance of proper communication and proper documentation in engineering projects. Conclusion, challenges can be staged depending on whether they are related to design or construction. And there are, as mentioned, extended challenges that we face every day in our life and in almost in every project. And the solution to these challenges is not magical. It is all about your attitude. Your attitude defines who you are and facilitate solving lots of problems. So positive attitude is always the key. As I mentioned, and as shown in the third bullet point, speaking up is always positive, provided it is done the right way with the right people. Teamwork and mentoring. I cannot emphasize more on the importance of teamwork and monitoring. Always try make use of the experience of people around you. Speak to your peers, speak to your supervisor, and make sure that you learn from them. We are all learning, whether we have 5 years of experience, whether we have 20 years of experience. We are in continuous learning process. So always seek help and discuss with others. Professional development and proactive approach. It is always good and it is always recommended to uh, uh, find ways to upgrade yourself, as I mentioned, and to be proactive. Proactive in terms of addressing problems, proactive in terms of researching the practical aspect of what you are doing, proactive in terms of learning new techniques, learning new ideas, stuff like that. Integrity and professional ethics. Once again, we are professional engineers or on the verge of being professional engineers. So I cannot stress more on the importance of sticking to our professional ethics. This is something we should not compromise on. And once again, uh, speak to your supervisor, seek help. And in some companies, like especially the large one, there are like ethics officers. You can speak to them and you can seek help and advice. Finally, not this is very important because I'm sorry, but this is happening a lot in Canada in general in the last 10 or 15 years. Not everything can be replicated. Every project is different. Every situation is different. It is very good to learn from local experience and to study lesson learned from previous project, but you should also think about project specific problems or challenges and project specific solution rather than trying to replicate what was done in a project that was done 20 years ago. Thank you.